My name is Amanda Moore, and I'm a second-year graduate student in the ACT program. And I'm going to just talk about the research I've been doing in this class. So, to begin.
We set the time for everybody?
15 minutes, 10-minute presentation in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my research in the CAVS archives led me to become interested in a lot of things, but in particular, the artist Aldo Tombolini, and it led me to actually look into his archives as well, which are in Salem. And so I visited Salem, and most of the material that I have collected is from those archives, and what I'm showing you here is called Black TV Spiral. And in 1967, Aldo Tombolini, when asked about this work, Black Spiral, which was an altered black and white television, which broadcast in a spiral configuration, he said, "Television is not an object. It's a live communication media. Black Spiral brings you live communication. One day we will look at nature as the floating astronauts do, in spiral or circular form." Tombolini made many predictions about the future, which are reflected in his work. And he was doing this before coming to CAVS, when he ran the Blackgate Theater in Cologne and established and performed there. And also New York, Blackgate Theater in Cologne, we'll get to later. And also through Communication Sphere at MIT CAVS. And these predictions about our perception and relation to the world and the shift in social interaction through the use of communications technology are apparent in the world around us today. I'm interested in these predictions and in their social and cultural implications. And about a year ago, specifically how he thinks we envision the world and the changes in our social interactions based upon technology. And about a year ago, before I started looking at Aldo's work, I drafted a diagram of how I was seeing the world that kind of looked like this. And I called this the no, no, nothing. And basically, on the periphery, with these arrows kind of pushing us into the stratosphere, were the social concepts and constructs which kind of lead us into the superficial. And then in the center, I forgot one. I did not forget one there. This here is a zero, like this entire space, because I think society tries to push us away from this state of being at zero. And I kind of found myself in this place of zero, and it was upsetting at first. And I think I often find myself there, but I kind of try to get away from that. But I found myself at this place, and I kind of gave into this zero and was able to pass into this center phase, which I call beyond the zero. So anyway, I found this to be very interesting because a lot of the things that Aldo talks about are kind of reflected in the way that I was thinking about the world when I came across his work. And I think in the center of the zero, I realized was kind of a void space, and Aldo talks a lot about voids. And I think, and what he's talking about with the future, I kind of looked into the past and saw maybe this as a space where time collapses. And I found actually a very similar diagram to this, looking through the Kabbalah, which pictures 3 layers, and this is the diagram of Ein Sof, which is like this unknowable universal thing that they're trying to convey that didn't create everything, but was here before and exists all around us all the time. And so I started to create my own diagrams of communication, because a lot of all this work at MIT was with this group called Communication Sphere. and how communication becomes ambiguous between transmission and reception. And so some of the diagrams look like this, with transmission beginning here and getting lost, and leaving kind of information in this perceptual level, and then going into this void space, which was kind of this space in the center of my diagram in the beginning. And then, so it passes through here, and then it comes back up, and perception is how it happens kind of as we're receiving a transmission of a communication. So, and then I thought a lot about technology in relation to communication. And also I should note that Aldo talks about us seeing the world in spiral form, and there could be many points of transmission and reception, and this is kind of a conical, let's see, this is a conical shape. And so I thought a lot about technology's relationship to communication and how it reflects this and complicates this. And so I came up with another kind of diagram, which is like this.
I might not actually see you, but the diagrams.
You see the diagrams now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm left-handed, so this kind of gets confusing. I don't know, this technology is made for me. So the transmission in this would go directly to the technology, where it would be received in much the same way, or received in much the same way that is received here by two individuals communicating, like through language or something, without a technology in between, or through visual imagery, or other kinds of body language. It gets really complicated, but we'll just say that this is a conversation. And so the technology will receive the transmission from a human individual. For instance, if we're using a telephone, the technology receives this, and then it processes and interprets this information, and then it transmits it again itself, and it goes into this kind of ambiguous space of the void in much the same way. And then it travels back up either this way, or on any of these lines that lead to a point of reception. And let's say it's going this way. It's perceived by a human individual and received and then interpreted by that person. So, and then this leads to another transmission, and so on, and so on. So,
Leave it, please.
leave it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. So, this is the black TV spiral. All right. So I'm just going to move myself a little bit. Okay. So now we get into something a little more intimate. So I feel a connection to Aldo through all of these things that I've been talking about, and his predictions of the future, his other works. He does a lot of other things than the one I just showed you. And I'm planning to do some reinterpretations on April 12th here in the Cube of some of these projects that I've been examining. So okay, so this shown behind me in the video kind of closely, well, you see me, I guess, a lot of me, but also you see a video excerpt from a collaborative work that Aldo Tombolini and Otto Pina did together, which was called Blackgate Cologne from 1968. And the work itself was a reenactment, so I'm talking about doing reinterpretations of some of these works, and as it was first presented in New York in the Blackgate Theater in Cologne a year earlier, and I mean Blackgate Theater in New York a year earlier, I'm sorry, I get these two things confused so much, and worked through about 20 performances, and so this is just one of the works that I'm looking at, and I just want to say a few words about reinterpretation before I finish. And I think that reinterpretation begins with a kind of empathy, which I think comes from perception. And I think, in other words, that we feel some sort of connection to the artist or work, a sense of mutual understanding. So I think empathy is a function of perception. And so empathy, so to me I think mutual understanding is the ultimate goal of communication. And if we sense that maybe someone understands us or we're understanding someone else, I think it leads us to the sense of, I mean, that is empathy. So empathy or relationship to empathy, maybe it's opposite. In Matter and Memory, Henri Bergson talks about all things containing their opposite. I mean, I think a lot of people do too. Empathy leads to a kind of reenactment or seeing ourselves in the role of the other. And I think this happens usually in our subconscious or in this kind of virtual space because we're not really aware of it until we think of it, until it arrives in our consciousness. And I think it's through this process of actualizing or becoming conscious of this feeling of empathy that we see ourselves in the work. We imagine ourselves in the position, we become the protagonist, we become the artist.